This is what we're making. A ring with the bead riveted in place with a textured inner band. The first ring I'm going to make, the middle is 0.6 thick and 7 millimeters wide. Same old story. Inside diameter of your ring sizer plus the thickness times pi will give you the exact length to cut this. But what I'm going to do for this one is I'm going to anneal it and put a pattern on it first. And I'm just going to use one of my hammers that has a pattern, and then I'll cut it to length, anneal it again because it'll be work hardened, and form it and solder it, hard solder. Normally I do this on the anvil, but the little bench block will work just fine. Now I want a cross-hatch pattern on this one, and you can see that at the moment it just got lines running one direction. So I'm going to turn it so that they go the other direction. Yeah, nice and simple. You could just as easily use a sharp cross-pane hammer and just hammer it one way and then angle it 90 degrees and hammer it the other way. Okay, my length is 58. I've got one end of the wire square, and I'm just going to hook the verniers on the end, drag it across, and I've got a nice little mark to cut to. You can use a nice sharp set of shears for this, but leave about 1/2 mil past the mark because you're going to have to file back to the mark because this will slightly round it. These will slightly round it, and you want it perfectly flat before you solder it. Otherwise there'll always be a dip in the metal you can't get out. So just brace your metal vertically at the end of your bench pin. Concentrate on holding your file flat. Use the safe edge of your file. Have a look. You'll be able to see whether it's flat or not. And when they're perfectly flat, use your flat half round pliers. The half round goes on the inside, and you're just going to form this into a bit of an oval. And what we want is for the ends to fit perfectly. No gaps, and we want the edges to be level. This one isn't. Take your time, get it correct now, because it'll save you a lot of grief trying to clean it up when you're done if it's not. So both edges, both sides, level, and a really good fit on the join. So at least that good. Now we're going to hold this in our third hand with the joint down, and we're going to put our solder on the inside, and we're going to keep our flame on the inside. That should keep from putting too much solder out on our pattern. Small amount of flux inside and out, 2 bits of hard solder, then a neutral flame, and slowly warm this until your flux dries out. Doesn't matter if your solder jumps around when you're drying it out. Once it gets to a crusty white, then you can use your solder pick to push them back where you want them. So I've got them sitting right on the seam now, bringing the flame up to the inside. And that's all we want. So you can see that the solder flowed on the inside, and I've got just a small line of solder on the outside to tidy up. So pickle it, dry it, round it up on your ring mandrel with a rawhide hammer. So always round it up before you do your sanding, because it's easier to tidy up a small spot on the top of a curve than it is on flat. If you try to do that when it's flat, you'll just damage the rest of the ring. So 400 grade paper on a sanding stick. Just tidy your solder joint, because we want to remove the smallest amount of metal possible, because it's going to be taking our pattern off. So once we get that, if you've destroyed a lot of the pattern, what you can do is you can put this back on your ring mandrel. Then you can use your patterning hammer on that spot where you've sanded it back. If your edges are uneven, like this one, the metal was on a bit of a taper, so I've got one side of the ring wider than the other, you can file it just by bracing against your bench peg. And then sideways on a piece of sandpaper on your bench. So just get both sides so that they're nice and flat. So this ring is basically done. I'm going to use a dapping punch or a doming punch to put just a small curve on the outside. So we want an anticlastic shape, but we don't want to hit it so hard that it stretches it. Yeah, so that's the right size still. Stop when you have just a small curve. Set this one aside. This one's done. We're going to make a ring for the outside to hold our bead, and what we need to know is the outside diameter, which is what we need to add to the half round wire that we're using. This half round is 1.5 high, so it'll be this diameter plus the height of your wire, or the thickness, times pi, and that will give you the length to cut this. Now the end of this wire doesn't have to be perfect, but we don't want it deformed, so cut it with your saw. So take your annealed ring shank, put it on your ring mandrel about one or two sizes smaller than your measurement on your ring. And what you're going to do is pull these two ends up like this. We don't want them to go all the way over. We just want this bit rounded perfectly. And these are the ones that are going to hold our bead. So the distance down here should be the distance of your bead. And then we'll bend these up.